Hi, it's Louise Platt at Spiral Bright Insight. I'm a galactic and an intuitive astrologer, and I want to talk to you in this video about the full moon in Scorpio. Now, this is taking place on Monday, the 12th of May at 5:55 p.m. if you are in the UK. So if you're anywhere else in the world, just check the time. But I am particularly drawn to the fact that it is going to be at 55 minutes past the hour, depending on where you are. And I will come back to that because that feels pretty special. It is when the moon is full in Scorpio at 22 degrees 12 minutes, and the sun will be in the opposing sign of Taurus. So, I often say this, but just, if you're new to astrology or you're new to my channel, the full moon basically marks the completion of the lunar cycle, the current lunar cycle that we are in. So there are always themes of endings, of completion, and of release, of letting go. But it's also designed to help you really identify how you are able to feel whole or step into a sense of wholeness working with the energy of the moon sign in that particular lunation. So we are working with Scorpio, which is the 8th sign in the zodiac. This is fixed water. Out of all the signs in the zodiac, Scorpio can sometimes be the one that creates a little bit of unease. And I think this is because of its association with the shadow, and for the majority of us, doing shadow work, walking with a shadow, stepping into the shadow is not something that we necessarily want to do. So I think that is possibly where the unease comes from. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, god of the underworld. So there is very strong links with this sign to transformation, to elimination, to release, to letting go, to death and rebirth. It is also a very deep sign, very emotional because we are working with water. Great sensitivity comes through. So if you have placements in Scorpio, you're likely to be very sensitive. It's also linked to secrets and all that is hidden, because when we're working with Scorpio, we basically go beneath the surface into the depths. So it's not always easy to see what you are dealing with when you're working with Scorpio because everything is so hidden. Now, with its association with Pluto, there are issues or themes of control, of power. And also, because this is the axis of Taurus and Scorpio, we are always going to be working with themes of exchange. Now, Scorpio is also linked to the taboo, to the esoteric, and to all those kind of subjects that maybe, we might not feel entirely comfortable with, depending on, what kind of person we are and what other energies we have in our chart. So Scorpio can be about sexuality, about abuse, about money, but always sort of thinking about exchange and power and control that comes through these different themes in life. There is definitely lots of intrigue. If you've got strong Scorpio in your chart, you're going to want to get to the bottom of things. You'll make a really good detective. You're going to love research, going deep and really finding out what is hidden and what lies behind the veil or beneath the mask. I'm also drawn to the fact with Scorpio, it is water. So, there is flow when we're working with Scorpio, but because it is fixed, often when we need to really get into grips with Scorpio, we need to come to a point of stillness, and that's where the fixed water comes in, because in order to be able to see beneath the surface, we need the water to be still. If you think of a mill pond, you can't, if there's lots of water and energies being churned up beneath the surface, it's going to be very difficult to see. So everything has to be as still as possible to be able to see into the depths. So we are reminded, especially with this full moon, that coming to that point of stillness is going to really serve us well, because it is from that point of stillness that we gain clarity, that we receive the insight that we are seeking. So we've got this kind of full moon energy, feeling whole, exploring all the themes of Scorpio, looking at where we might need to let go of something in order to be able to move on. And of course, with Scorpio, this is about elimination. This is about release. This is about the death of something in order to create space for something new, for the rebirth. Scorpio is also linked to Phoenix energy. So the knowing that things have to sometimes be burnt to the ground in order for something new to be born. And of course, as well with Scorpio, there are three symbols. So we have the scorpion, which, you know, sometimes I think is another reason why Scorpio can get a slightly more negative association, because the scorpion, you know, is not necessarily, you know, a lovable creature. It has a sharp bite or a sharp sting, and, you know, if threatened, it is going to lash out. So that is, you know, the other side or trait of Scorpio is, you know, the deep sensitivity can create emotional outbursts and a lashing out in order ultimately to protect the self, because sensitivity brings and creates vulnerability. But as well as the scorpion, we also have the eagle. And the eagle obviously brings this energy of flight, of majesty, of courage, of sovereignty, of being able to rise up and really see things from a much bigger and grander and wider, higher perspective. And then we have the phoenix, which is ultimately about the death and rebirth and ultimate transformation. Now, I also wanted to just come back to the fact that we are working with, in the UK particularly, the 555, but anywhere in the world, because this is at 55 minutes past the hour, we do have the double five energy. And I talked about this in my last video about the five sort of representing change, the tipping point or the midpoint where we can sort of see past, present and future, and also adventure. But ultimately, the number being a very strong marker for change. Right, so here we have the chart for the full moon, and you will see that the sun is here in Taurus with the moon over in the opposing sign of Scorpio. Now, there's some quite striking aspects in this chart that I want to draw attention to. First of all, if we look at the moon, we can see that the moon is in trine to the North Node over here in Pisces. So a beautiful water trine. And that for me is really supporting and validating the need to be able to see beneath the surface, and also to be able to walk and face the shadow aspects of the self and what is hidden in order to be able to move forward. And of course, North Node in Pisces is really helping us to surrender to a higher power and to release attachment to victimhood, to step in and step forward with faith, but also to really start to work more in unity consciousness as well. Now, Saturn and Ceres are both at 28 degrees of Pisces at this time. So they are in a trine, but their trine is slightly wider. The orb is slightly wider. So I'm not going to bring their energies into this particular video, but I am also drawn to the fact that the Sphinx, which is down here in Capricorn, is sextile the moon. And of course, for me, the Sphinx is an asteroid that links straight back to ancient Egypt, but also to hidden information, to secret information, to being able to ask the right questions in order to get the answers and the wisdom and the insight that you are seeking. And in Capricorn, you know, there is a sense that this is wisdom that is very ancient. It may also be something that is literally sitting or settling in our bones, because Capricorn is linked to the bones, to our bone structure. It's information perhaps that is going to help us to create new structure, to be able to move forward and to rise high, because I also see Capricorn as serving as the bridge between the physical and the spiritual aspects of self. So that feels really profound. And of course, if we look up here at Jupiter, Jupiter at 23 degrees of Gemini, Jupiter is in a quincunx to the moon. So again, this quincunx creates this slightly awkward, uncomfortable dynamic. They're having to speak to each other because they are within orb, but they don't really have a lot in common. And I think for me, Jupiter, you know, now in the third decan of Gemini, is really asking us to connect to information, to get our facts right. And with the moon in Scorpio, the moon in Scorpio is very emotional, so we have to absolutely be guided by our emotional state and our emotional wisdom and our emotional intelligence. But we also need to make sure that we have got some of the facts right and not to get carried away by how we might be having an emotional reaction or being triggered by something. It is making sure that we come back and make sure that we are checking our information, and it is information that is possibly coming through at this time that is going to really help to broaden and expand our minds and our understanding of the world, but that may trigger an emotional response, an emotional reaction, which is again, it's about being able to balance that, the heart and the mind, which I have been talking about a lot lately. We also have this square to these two asteroids sitting in Aquarius, and they are creating a T-square with the moon and with the sun, both on the Taurus-Scorpio axis. So the first is Chariklo. This is at 22 degrees of Aquarius, and Chariklo is sitting next to Pallas Athene at 23 degrees of Aquarius. Now, these are really interesting energies to have at this full moon, and if I sort of break them down and talk about them separately, the T-square that they are creating means that there is a point of friction. This is a fixed T-square, so both Chariklo and Pallas are playing quite a strong role here, and they require their attendance and their recognition at the party at this full moon placement. They are very much sort of feature guests, but I also see them, because this is fixed energy, as holding space, and that is what Chariklo is very much about. She is said to be the wife of Chiron, the wounded healer. She was a centaur as well, although it is said in myth that she had shape-shifting abilities, and sometimes she would be a water nymph, sometimes a centaur, and also has sometimes been known or described as a shaman. So she had very, very special, very magical, very transformative abilities. Her energy is absolutely connected to healing, but through grace and purity and a real gentle approach, patience, a softness, a compassion that perhaps, other and energies aren't able to offer. And this feels really, really welcome at this time, because we are going to be feeling deeply emotional. We may be working with our shadow. We may be uncovering things that have been hidden. Don't forget the full moon. The full moon has the full light of the sun shining on this part of the chart. So things are coming to light. Things are being exposed. Things are being revealed. And Chariklo is there to hold space. Now, she's very divine feminine in terms of her expression, very mystical, very intuitive, but her sort of skill is the ability to offer love and to be able to hold a space without needing to fix or interfere or rescue anybody. So it feels we have this beautiful presence, her ancient, divine, feminine, nurturing, compassionate, gentle wisdom, holding space for us as we experience this deep time of transition. And of course, it may be the case that we are also experiencing some sort of awakening, because I haven't mentioned this yet, but Uranus is very close to the sun, and therefore opposite the full moon in this chart. And Uranus in Taurus is all about awakening, about enlightenment, about a light bolt, a shock wave. Something is happening that may be rattling us, and Chariklo is here to make sure that we have, this beautiful energy to hold space for us. She's not going to rush in and try and fix things or change things or soothe things over. She's just there to witness, to be present, and it's a very, very beautiful square, very beautiful energy to be working with. And then Pallas next to her, she is less gentle. I would say she's more of a warrior, goddess energy. She is the feminine, but she also brings in a lot of the masculine energy as well. Very much linked to wisdom. Obviously, she has her special owl, who, you know, is the messenger, to link to strategy, to intelligence, and very much of the mind, which of course is what Aquarius is going to really pull us towards. So these two presences in Aquarius is making sure that, you know, although we are going through an emotional time, we're working with a shadow, we're seeing what is hidden, there are secrets coming to light, you know, and there may be issues around control and power and disempower and exchange and, you know, all sorts of perhaps quite murky things coming up. These pair in Aquarius are really reminding us that we do need to perhaps take a step back, try and see the bigger picture, try and see what is happening from a collective perspective rather than being drawn in and feeling over emotional. And also the importance of being able to stay detached as well, because Aquarius is very detached. So Pallas tends to be more non-emotional. Obviously Chariklo is going to hold back but still hold space, but not get involved and try and rush in and fix everything and mother everybody. So, you know, this is really very, very powerful energy. And Pallas also gives us the clarity which comes through seeing things from the mind and the mental perspective. So that is really, really beautiful. Now, there are a few other things that are worth mentioning in this chart. Chiron and Eris are very close together in the third decan of Aries. And this is really, you know, the wounded healer is stepping up to sit side by side with Eris, the goddess of discord and strife. So we may be feeling fired up. We may be feeling more wounded at this time, given what is coming through. And of course, these two asteroids are also forming a quincunx to the moon, and with Jupiter in sextile to them, this creates a yod. So this feels very fated. It's almost as if we've been waiting for this moment, this time to come, so that we can have access to this new information. It is going to be emotional. It is going to trigger us, and it is going to wound us. It might get us worked up. We might want to shout out, you know, and it's not fair. And, you know, kind of Aries is about standing up for the underdog and calling out injustice. So that may be a really big theme, but it is also about being able to process and to feel the emotions and allow them to flow rather than becoming too stuck. You know, allow them to flow, allow that release. But it is very much all eyes on the moon through that yod. I'm also drawn to the fact that Mars at 11 degrees of Leo is in a trine to Celestia at 11 degrees of Aries. So this feels really, really beautiful. It feels very empowering. We've talked about Celestia quite a lot in recent videos. She is the goddess of the salty sea. She's linked to diamond lights, to the reflection of light and all the beautiful diamond codes and frequencies that we are very much working with at this time. Of course, Mars has now moved beyond Rogue Cancri, which is the diamond star in fixed star galactic astrology. But Celestia is there to really continue to harness that beautiful energy and to help us to see beneath the surface as well. So with Celestia, I always see, you know, there is a reminder not to get distracted or put off by or waylaid by what is glittering on the surface. It's an invitation to go down into the depths. And of course, with Celestia, the seawater, the tears, the healing of the salt water, the healing benefits of the salt water also come through, which, you know, does feed into the full moon in Scorpio and that beautiful water energy and the depths that is being created through this chart. We also have Jupiter in a trine to Atlantis, which is now at 26 degrees of Libra. Atlantis is still in retrograde motion. So again, there may be information coming through that is linked to our ancient past, to this ancient civilization hybridization that is going to help bring us more balance, more harmony, perhaps more peace. So that may also be a theme that you are working with, particularly if you've got strong connections to Atlantis in your own chart. And of course, Atlantis is also creating a trine, which is a grand air trine with Chariklo and Pallas. Again, there may be themes that are relevant there. But let's come back to some of the fixed stars and the galactic energies, because there is a lot going on in this chart. Now, with I'll start with the moon, because the moon is the main sort of feature, the main man or the main woman in this chart. And the moon is conjunct Hadar, which is Beta Centauri in the Centaurus constellation. Now, Centaurus constellation, or Centaurus, is really interesting because we have this connection to the centaurs, which are, of course, creatures half bull, half man. And there is this really interesting sort of symbolism of hybridization, of coming together, of mixing of two different parts. And, you know, whenever we have strong stars, and there's Alpha Centauri and Beta Centauri that we work with in galactic astrology, it can point to a need to reconcile some sort of polarity. And, you know, with the moon here, it feels like inner polarity. It's about unifying different or fragmented aspects of the self to come together. The Centaur energy obviously also offers very quiet but very grounded wisdom and presence, which we are being offered through the square to Chariklo. And with Hadar in particular, this is really, really beautiful, because this is a star that reminds us of our need to connect to nature, to connect to Earth, to really work in harmony and collaborate with Earth as a living being. The Hadarians are absolutely, you know, completely committed to working in harmony with the earth, in harmony with one another, with all living beings. There is a beautiful connection to unconditional love whenever Hadar is strong in the chart, but also working with the healing gifts of earth and the wisdom of the plants, of the flowers, of the animals, and the essences of the water and the air and the sunlight. So these are all really strong themes that come forward with Hadar. And with the trine to the North Node as well, this is really, for me, sort of trying to highlight the importance of us moving forward in much more harmony with, in much more, and having a deeper connection with the earth. And of course, you know, one of the main issues I think that humanity are facing at this time is the fact that we have become so disconnected with the earth. And, you know, we spend so much time in our heads and our minds. It is all about science, it is all about progress, and we need to be able to come back into the heart, which is what Hadar conjunct the moon is really inviting and almost requiring, insisting that we do. And certainly this week, since the 5-5 and portal on Monday, where Ceres was conjunct the North Node, I have been much more conscious of my own connection with Earth and my own need to be in much more sacred ceremony with Earth and with the rhythms and the patterns of nature in particular. And I feel, having spoken to a few other people, you know, that is the case for many of us. So I feel at this time that is what we are being invited to remember. And this is very much about remembering. So the Sun in opposition is conjunct Capulus in the Perseus constellation. And this is really interesting because Capulus linked to Perseus, you know, this is the hero in the myth. You know, Capulus and Perseus, with his sword, being able to cut through, you know, all that has been fixed, face challenges head on, lots of courage, lots of bravery, lots of force, very powerful, very cunning, quite intelligent energy, very divine masculine, but also inviting us to face our demons and to face challenge head on. Energy is very determined, but it also reminds us that, it is important that we do rely on others. We shouldn't have to go at things on our own, and that collaboration and coming together and creating community is a really important part of being human. And it is that which, the sun aligned with Capulus is reminding us of that importance and that message. Now, of course, I've talked about the fact that Uranus is still conjunct Algol. I did a separate video about Medusa, so I would invite you to go back and watch that because a lot of the themes I talked about are very relevant. Algol is trine the south node. So again, I feel that we're able to release a lot of the stories, a lot of the energies and the attachments, and also the trauma that we have linked and connected to Algol in our lineage. And there's also a beautiful square from Uranus to Hydra, to Alphard in Hydra, which is really requiring that we work with the serpent energy, that we are able to shed layers, to release, to let go, which again, of course, is part of the full moon signature, but also to work with themes of the divine feminine, to step more into a connection with nature, to work with the cycles of nature and start to really see their importance and also their value and their worth to us as we start to reconnect to the rhythm of nature that sort of lies within our physical vessels. So this is really, really, really beautiful, and it's almost forcing that remembrance. Hydra is also about Kundalini and spiritual awakening. So again, it could be a time when we are experiencing spontaneous spiritual awakenings, even among people that perhaps, weren't really open to anything before. Something may happen that triggers that around this time. Now, Saturn is conjunct Shet. We've talked so much about Shet over the past year, the beautiful star in Pegasus, helping us to rise up, to release and break free from the chains that have kept us bound. And it is also coming into a square with Betelgeuse, with Eterman in Draco constellation, with Galactic Center, and with Polaris. So again, this is really making sure that the decisions we make, the lessons we learn, the structure that we put in or that we're letting go of, because Saturn is in Pisces, is very much aligned with higher consciousness, with the ability to see things from a much wider, a much higher, much more cosmic perspective at this time. And I particularly love the fact that Polaris is there, because Polaris for me is reminding us of the need to stand still and to allow all the energies and all the transformation and the change and the flux to take place around us, but to remain anchored and present and not to get drawn into it too much, to trust that this is part of the process, that this is part of what needs to happen, but it is also showing us that this is the way forward. Of course, Polaris is the North Star, the guiding light, showing us where we need to go next. And we have this beautiful square coming through Saturn, which is sort of making sure that we ground that wisdom in as we move forward. Now, there's some other beautiful stars. Venus is very close to Alpha Reticulum. I've talked about this star quite recently as well. And this, for me, it does symbolize shadow and light as well, and the polarity and, working with the shadow and with fears, but it is also about the web of light and the spider energy, the matrix, and bringing strands together, creating something really beautiful out of what might have been really mixed up and muddled strands of light before. So bringing order, but also relying on, this beautiful creatrix energy to create something new. If you think about the spider as being, she spins her web, she uses her web to catch her food so that it's sustenance, it's also protection, it's her home, but it's also a work of art, it's something of great beauty. And with this star next to Venus, it's reminding us of our ability to create these beautiful strands, to make these connections of our own creatrix and creator energy, and the fact that if we all come together, we can create this beautiful web of light, and we can shift what we might have seen as a matrix of this web of understanding that might have been kept us entrapped, and change our perspective to see it as something of great beauty and something that we can actually morph and change and rebuild and recreate to basically suit us and to fit our new song and our new way forward. And Mercury is opposite the Mercury is opposite the Shapley attractor. I think Mercury is at 3 degrees of Taurus in this chart. So This is, again, the Shapley is such a beautiful but so powerful cosmic energy. For me, it really demands that everything we do, everything we say, everything that we think, all the information, the stories at this time are grounded in nothing but truth, complete integrity, complete authenticity. So that feels like any information that is coming out, it is going to be true finally. And, Mercury is going to have to make sure that that is the case. And there's also this beautiful sort of pull back to our original form through the Shapley attractor and that connection. So taking us back to the truth and the wisdom of who we are. There's a square to Altair, which is, again, the eagle energy, Aquila, the energy helping us to rise up, to see a bigger picture, to see things from a much more sort of highly more empowered way, but also making sure that any spells or manipulation or distortion through words in particular and thoughts is not allowed to continue. We have to break through that finally at this time, and that feels very strong with the square here to Altair and Mercury. And of course it's creating a T-square with the Shapley, so Mercury opposing the Shapley and T-square Altair in the middle. Jupiter is now heading towards lots of activations and alignments with stars in the Orion star system. So again, I feel there's going to be lots of activations and memories coming forward about our Orion history. And that for me really encompasses polarity and division and separation, war and conflict, but also the ability to come together and to step into a higher expression, which is really what the Orion light was about, and the Orion Christ. And helping the Orions to move beyond separation, to see that actually there comes a point when the separation causes so much pain, so much destruction, that there is no choice but to push forward and to move through that. So I feel that Jupiter is going to help by bringing through information and insight, and perhaps even stories that relate to those times and those themes, to help us remember parts of our galactic past. But there is definitely, a lot to be learnt, a lot of growth to come through being able to see the division in the cold light of day, and to really feel it and understand what its implications are, if that is what we choose to move forward or not. But I expect I will be talking about that more as Jupiter moves through the final degrees of Orion and activates all the stars that are there. So I'm going to leave it there. As always, I feel, there's a lot, but often I just feel like I have scratched the surface. But I hope you have resonated with and enjoyed some of the themes and the insight that I have brought through in this particular video. I welcome comments. I love to read, if things have particularly stood out, or how you might be experiencing the energies. Where is this full moon in your personal chart? Let me know. I know other people read the comments as well, and it's really nice, that we have this beautiful community on my page. So thank you so much if you are contributing regularly. If you're not yet signed up to my newsletter, please do just go onto my website, spiralbright.co.uk, sign up for that there. I do have some things to share with you in the coming days, possibly weeks. So please make sure you are on the mailing list if you want to be the first to hear my news and what I'm going to be announcing. And as well, if you find my content useful and you find it valuable, then please do feel free to use the super thanks button, which is on this channel. Very grateful for any contributions. So thank you so much. Wishing you an amazing rest of the week, and I will be back very soon.